the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the Morning Line. Nick Beres here for another terrific episode of Morning Line. And it is Tuesday. We've got a good show on tap for you. We're going to open up the phone lines and get things going in the aftermath of the summit between Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump yesterday. We thought we would get your take on how things played out. Not only that, we can also talk about his meeting with the European leaders prior to the summit in Finland yesterday and how things went out. If you've been paying attention, a lot of, I would say, reaction to what the president did. And I think bipartisan speaking, a degree of negative reaction. Of course, he has his supporters that are going to be out there and his argument about why he did what he did and what he said, but a lot of potential damage control going on the day after within the administration, one way or the other. And I'm sure we'll hear more from the president today and we'll see more tweets, but your take on it. But really, in case you weren't paying close attention, we'll go over some of the basics of it this morning with our good professor from Vanderbilt, Thomas Schwartz. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Nick.
Nice to have you on, and I don't know, there's so much to touch bases on. Highly anticipated summit, with Vladimir Putin in Finland, and I guess I wanted your take up front on how this played out as you watched it, perhaps, and then what you think is going to happen today.
Well, I think you're going to have a lot of argument back and forth today. The president is going to have his defenders. There may be some backtracking. In an early tweet this morning, he already indicated that he has high respect for his intelligence professionals because it was seen yesterday that he seemed to be throwing them under the bus and saying that he believed Putin more than American intelligence. So he's already trying to backtrack a little bit from that. I do think, again, the larger sense is that Trump on the world stage is being very disruptive, criticizing our allies, embracing our enemies, in a way changing the tone of American diplomacy in quite fundamental ways. And I think that's going to be a conversation for a while. It may get lost, though, very quickly because other issues come in. I mean, these things, one of the things that the Trump presidency has specialized in is changing the subject, and I wouldn't be surprised if that also happened in the next couple of days.
I have to wonder, and I'll be curious to see if some of our viewers want to weigh in, 737-7587. And we have a lot of viewers, as you know, on this program who are strong Trump supporters. And I think people that support Donald Trump, like, anyone who lives in this country and is focused, they're proud Americans, they love this country, and they want to believe that our government is looking out for our best interests. So what I'm curious about that got me, whether you're for Trump or against Trump, and whether this is President Trump or another president doing the same thing, it's just hard for me to get my hands around our intelligence, basically his intelligence team, saying, yes, there is a clear, convincing evidence, including just 10 recent indictments, that the Russians tried to somehow manipulate, the election. All right? Pretty darn clear. And then you've got Putin, and I don't know, if you're an American and you think Putin's a good guy, do your history. The guy is a despot. He's awful. He's a killer. He's a dictator. He's a bad person, all right? Whatever it is. And you have the president's intelligence team telling him there was this. And then the president, I imagine, in talks, asking Putin, and then he's quoted saying, I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. So I'm guessing the president maybe brought it up, and Putin looked at him in the eye and maybe patted his arm and said, I can tell you unequivocally, I didn't do it. Right. And my question is, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, why on earth would you believe a single word out of Vladimir Putin's mouth, much less at the expense of the American intelligence community, which is one of the best in the world? That baffles me. Why would you believe anything? He strongly said no, and that's good enough for you? You're just going to take it on his face, this guy who's a monster? I mean, come on.
Well, I think
I don't get it.
There is a spectrum of
baffling.
There's a spectrum of explanations. You can get very sinister, as some have, and see Trump as essentially almost a Russian asset, as someone who has been cultivated by the Russians for years and for whom they either have incriminating information or in some ways a compromising information, and therefore he is doing their bidding. That's, I think, on one extreme. The other is that this is also partly an ego thing for Trump. Trump does not want to believe that his election was in any way tainted by foreign interference.
I think that's probably true, meaning that, yeah, if they come to that conclusion one way or the other, it could somehow taint him winning. And no one's necessarily saying that, though I think Putin made it pretty darn clear that given a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, he definitely wanted Donald Trump. He supported him. He wanted him to win. And so, okay, so so those are two. Any other explanations that you can think why you would take anything Putin tells you to your face about something as controversial as this?
Well, you've got to remember that Donald Trump basically has been refuting sort of parts of the American establishment and government from the very beginning. I mean, he's always been sort of willing to say what he calls it, the not politically correct. He knows, for example, that there were people within the FBI and other parts of the American government who deeply didn't want him to win. And so he has this view that there is a type of American deep state, groups within Washington, in the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, and other places that don't think he should be president. And for that reason, he is far more willing than past presidents have been to essentially distance himself from his own government.
The other thing, though, that is a little bit disturbing is just the way, and I understand that the U.S. has some legitimate maybe grievances with some of our European partners, but it's just so odd to me that as opposed to making friends and doing well with Canada and Britain and Germany, he's cozying up to the leader of North Korea and Russia. It's mind-boggling. It is
a stark reversal of the past. And it does raise questions about exactly what he thinks diplomacy is about or what American national interests are. Now, part of this is, of course, that he does think that our allies and those we've been trading with have taken advantage of us.
And I think he has a point there.
So, and he, in that sense, he has this, as he said, the EU as a foe, the European Union, which that's normally not seen. Most Americans would not use that expression to talk about the organization of European countries that are almost all allies of the United States. But because he sees these things through a more transactional and an economic perspective and trade, he's taken a much more negative view.
And maybe that's right. And you can make the argument, I did not have a problem with him maybe reaching out to North Korea and meeting. I always wondered why in the past maybe saying, look, it doesn't hurt to try. And good for him for trying that. Now, I think we're seeing after the fact why maybe other presidents didn't bother, because just Kim Jong-un getting to meet with the president's huge cachet. Looks good for him. And now as we're finding out, whatever kind of agreements they worked out on the nuclear issue, nothing's happening. And there's still problems even getting the remains back of those North Korean MIAs. So whatever of substance happened in that meeting with North Korea right now doesn't seem like it's happening.
No, it looks like these meetings and this diplomacy is all for show, a sort of spectacular show.
And so who gets something out of it? The U.S. didn't seem to get much out of it. I don't know how the president benefits, but Kim Jong-un sure did, and Putin sure does. You know, picture here on the front page of USA Today of the two of them shaking hands. Looks good for Putin.
No, Putin's situation coming after the World Cup, which was a great success. I mean, Russia really does seem not the weak, economically declining power that it did a few years ago. It seems very much back as a counterpart to the United States as a superpower, and that's an achievement of Putin. Russia was in terrible shape 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and now it stands next to the President of the United States.
Do you think today we'll see, and I think the President in some tweets has not backed off himself yet, but we know with a policy, for instance, separating the immigrants coming across the border illegally from their children, stuck to it for a while, and then I think finally those closest to him behind said, look, we got to stop this. This is too damaging. It's wrong. And he went back on it, which is very rare for our president to do that. Do you think today he will slide back a bit, more so than just saying, well, I do have confidence? Because I got to be honest with you, after the fact, hearing him say now that he has confidence after what we heard yesterday, why would you believe that?
No,
what else can he do today to maybe ease it? Because, by the way, this is not just Democrats. You expect the Democrats to go after him no matter how this thing went. But, I mean, you've got Republicans on almost every level, okay, going after him. And the ones that aren't going after him aren't saying anything.
Right.
So
no, he's been reduced to really his loyalists on this one, because even people like Newt Gingrich, who usually speaks in his behalf, criticized him strongly.
Right.
So I think what he'll probably try to do, or what might happen, is some degree of backtracking, and then I think he will try to switch the subject, change the subject to something else.
Could move to whatever the next step is.
Issue.
Does this have, before we take our break, this type of, you could argue, missteps that he backtracked on with what happened at the border, or this now? You're right. The public can move on quickly, but can this be an impact coming to the midterm elections?
What I think would be important here would be if in the midterm elections the Democrats take the House or the Senate. I think the House more likely. What you're going to see is there's going to be some degree of attention to the idea that this is a Trump defeat. And then you're going to see House investigations of the Russia connection be intensified, because the Democrats will control the committees.
Okay, it's interesting. And you think about the state of Tennessee, which is very heavily Trump. You can tell this by the commercials we hear on the political ads. Every other one is "I stand with President Trump," and that's how this state votes. But at the same time, you have Senator Corker, who came out very strongly against it. Outgoing Senator Corker, who has said, I guess, that he supports Representative Blackburn for running to some degree, but Representative Blackburn's been a staunch supporter of Trump. And you just look at Corker. I don't think he'd have any problem with the Democrat Bredesen winning.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I guess he's kind of walking the middle line, and that's going to be a heck of a race there. But it's just curious to see how this will play out. Look, we'll take a break. I want to hear what you think. I mean, if some of what was said yesterday and the way it was handled disturbs you, fine. If you think it was perfectly great and you have no problems with it, I'd like to hear why you feel that as well. Just an open forum here, and we'll continue our conversation on the President's Summit with Vladimir Putin right after this. Stay with us.
Dr.